Have you ever wondered if there are books that no one was ever meant to read? Books so dangerous that even mentioning them was forbidden. Take a slow breath and settle in. Tonight, we are about to explore one of the strangest mysteries I have ever told you. But before we start, do me a little favor, tap the like button, let me know where in the world you are watching from, and subscribe to the channel. Not because everyone says you should, but because you do not want to miss the moment when history and mystery collide. Now, imagine this with me. It is late at night, the kind of night where the wind seems to whisper secrets through the trees. You are standing inside an abandoned library, the air heavy with dust and the faint smell of old wood and candle smoke. Your footsteps echo softly on the stone floor as you move toward the center of the room, where a single table waits, lit by a lone candle. On that table lies something that does not quite belong. A book, its leather cover cracked like dry earth, its pages curled and yellowed but strangely untouched by time. You feel drawn to it, as if it has been waiting for you, calling you all these years. This is the hidden Codex, a manuscript that history tried very hard to erase. For centuries, kings, priests, and scholars tried to destroy every copy of it. They claimed it was cursed, dangerous, heretical, but someone, somewhere, refused to let it vanish completely. And that is why, tonight, we are here. Some say it was written by a monk who claimed to see visions of the future, visions so terrifying that he tried to burn the book, only to watch the flames die out on their own. Others say it was not a monk at all, but something far older that walked this earth before mankind even learned to tell stories. You hesitate for a moment, your hand hovering over the cover. The leather feels warm to the touch, almost alive. Deep down, you know opening this book might change you forever. But curiosity is stronger than fear. You open the first page, and the air around you grows colder. The candlelight trembles as if the room itself is holding its breath. What secrets could be so dangerous that entire kingdoms swore to silence them? What truths are worth burning libraries for? And if this codex had been waiting for someone like you to finally read, what does that mean? Tonight, you and I are going to walk through those pages together. We will peel back layers of history, myth, and superstition. We will follow clues across continents and centuries. And we may discover something that was never meant to be discovered. But one last warning, once we begin, there is no turning back. Knowledge can't be unread. Truth can't be unseen. So get comfortable, keep listening. And prepare yourself, because this might just be the last bedtime story you ever want to hear. If you are still here, it means you are ready to hear the rest, so let us turn the page together. The hidden codex did not simply sit on a shelf waiting to be found. Its history is a trail of fire, fear, and desperate escapes. For hundreds of years, the book appeared, disappeared, and reappeared in the most unlikely places, as if it had a will of its own. Chronicles from the 14th century describe a Benedictine abbey in southern France that claimed to guard a book of shadows. The records tell us that the monks assigned to watch over it rarely lived long. Some went mad, scratching cryptic warnings into the walls before vanishing without a trace. During the Inquisition, officials reportedly ordered it burned in the town square. Witnesses swore the flames would not consume it. The pages curled and smoked but never turned to ash. Just imagine standing there, watching a fire refuse to do its job, feeling the crowd shift nervously as if the book itself were mocking their fear. Would you run, or would you stay just to see what could possibly survive a fire like that? By the 1600s, the manuscript had traveled across Europe. It was hidden in false bottom chests, buried under monastery gardens, and smuggled across borders disguised as innocent prayer books. Every attempt to destroy it was matched by someone willing to risk everything to save it. And you have to wonder, why keep risking your life for something that seems cursed? Because this book was not just a story. It held maps, diagrams, and astronomical charts that pointed to places no known explorer had ever recorded. Some pages appeared to describe events centuries before they happened: wars, plagues, the rise and collapse of empires. Historians who dared to study it called it a dangerous piece of time travel, written in ink. And then, there are the gaps, entire decades when the Codex vanishes completely from the historical record. No one knows who had it or what they discovered during those silent years. Those blank spaces might be the most chilling part, because they hint that those who possessed it were not just readers but participants, rewriting the story as they went. So here's the question: if you found a book that could show you the future, maybe even change it, would you read it, or would you bury it where no one could ever find it again? If you have stayed with me this far, you might be wondering who exactly has dared to look inside this thing. The truth is, there have been a handful of very brave, or very foolish, people who have actually read the hidden Codex. Their stories are as fascinating as the book itself, and maybe even stranger. Take Father Guillaume, a monk from the late 1400s. According to the abbey's own records, he was assigned to guard the Codex for one winter. When spring came, the other monks found his cell covered in strange diagrams drawn in charcoal. He had written the same sentence over and over on the walls. "It is not telling me the future, it is telling me what I have to do." Guillaume himself was gone, never seen again. Some of the monks claimed they heard him laughing in the cloister at night for weeks after his disappearance. Then there was the scholar Elisabetta di Rossi in 1643, who was said to have spent 3 months translating part of the Codex into Italian. Her notes survive, and they are chilling. She wrote that the book spoke back to her, changing its words every time she looked away. One line in her notes simply says, "It wants me to go to the mountains." No one knows if she ever did, but she vanished shortly after, and her house was found abandoned with dinner still on the table. And there are modern stories too. In 1978, a graduate student in Prague claimed to have found a copy in a sealed archive. He read it for 3 days straight, then suddenly boarded a train to a remote village and stayed there for the rest of his life, never publishing a single paper again. His colleagues still call it the smartest career suicide in history. You have to ask yourself, what did they all see? What could possibly make someone abandon everything? Their vows, their home, their future, just because of a book. And here's where it gets almost funny, almost. In the 19th century, an eccentric collector named Lord Whitby tried to display the Codex at a dinner party as a conversation piece. The story goes that the guests took one look at the first page, turned pale, and left without touching their food. The chef was furious. "Do you know how hard it is to make a perfect roast pheasant?" he reportedly shouted. No one ever came back to that house for dinner again. So maybe the Codex is not just a book you read, maybe it is a book that reads you. Maybe it decides who gets to finish it and who does not. Now here's the real question for you. If the book were placed in front of you tonight, knowing what happened to everyone else, would you still open it? Or would you walk away? So, you have heard the stories of those who held the Codex. Now let us take a closer look at the thing itself. Picture the cover in your mind. Dark, cracked leather that seems to have absorbed centuries of candle smoke, rain, and perhaps something darker. Across the surface are markings that do not quite look like any language you know. Not Latin, not Greek, not anything you could find in a normal textbook. Scholars who examined it said the symbols seem to shift depending on who is looking. One researcher swore that when he first saw the cover, it looked like a prayer, but when he looked again, the words had rearranged themselves into something that looked like a curse. Others claimed the markings were not letters at all, but star charts, a map of the sky as it might have looked thousands of years ago. The center of the cover bears a circular seal, pressed so deep into the leather it feels more like a scar than a design. Around the circle are figures, not quite human, not quite animal, locked in some kind of eternal dance. The more you stare at them, the more it feels like they are staring back at you. And then there is the spine of the book. Along it runs a single phrase, written in a language that no one has ever been able to translate. But every single person who has seen it says the same thing. They did not need to understand the words to know what they meant. Somehow, just looking at them filled them with the sense of a warning, like a voice whispering, "You should not be here." One professor once tried to copy the cover exactly, hoping to decipher the code. His assistant reported that the ink refused to stay on the page, running together as if the paper rejected it. After 3 nights of trying, the professor fell ill, muttering in his sleep that the circle wants to be complete. He recovered weeks later, but he never went near the book again. So here's the strange thing. Maybe the Codex is not just something you read, maybe it is something that reads you back, testing whether you are worthy of turning the first page. Imagine it now, you reach out, brush the dust away, and your reflection shimmers faintly in the dark leather. For a moment, you almost see another face looking back at you. Someone who might have opened this book centuries ago. And you realize you are about to stand in their place, do what they once did, and maybe repeat their fate. Would you keep going, or would you put it back, blow out the candle, and leave the room forever? If there is one thing history teaches us, it is that dangerous knowledge rarely stays hidden without someone powerful trying to keep it that way. The story of the hidden Codex is no exception. As soon as whispers of the Codex spread through the monasteries and courts of medieval Europe, the church became involved, and not in a gentle way. There are records of papal envoys sent specifically to hunt for the book, to confiscate and destroy it. Some orders treated it as a relic of heresy so blasphemous that even mentioning it could lead to excommunication. Imagine a candlelit chamber somewhere in Rome, a group of cardinals gathered around a table, debating not just theology but whether a single manuscript might be enough to unravel the faith of an entire continent. Some argued it should be burned, others feared burning it would only give it more power, turn it into legend. In the end, the decision was made to hide it, lock it away where no one could find it. But there was a problem. Hiding something so tempting only made people want it more. Kings began to compete for it, claiming that whoever possessed the Codex would gain not just forbidden knowledge, but divine insight, the kind of insight that could win wars, control populations, and rewrite history. Secret societies formed around the mere rumor of its existence. Spies were sent to steal it from rival courts. At least one assassination in Florence is believed to have been ordered simply to obtain a single missing page. And it was not just the church. Secular powers joined in too. Royal decrees were issued, banning the possession of any text that matched the description of the Codex. Some rulers ordered entire libraries burned just to be sure. You can almost hear the crackle of parchment, smell the smoke of centuries of knowledge going up in flames. All because of a book no one was supposed to read. The question we have to ask is, what could possibly be written inside that would terrify both kings and popes? What kind of knowledge threatens not just faith but power itself? And here's the part that always gets me, the Codex kept slipping away. No matter how many times it was seized, locked up, or destroyed, it reappeared somewhere else. In someone else's hands, as if it refused to stay hidden. So maybe that is the real danger, not that the Codex exists, but that it wants to be read. And it will keep finding a way until someone, maybe you, finally reads it to the end. If you think this is all just legend, let us bring in the scientists. Because yes, people have actually studied the hidden Codex with every tool modern science could offer. In 1993, a team of researchers in Vienna got access to what was believed to be one of the last surviving copies. They performed carbon dating on the parchment, expecting it to be from the late Middle Ages. The results shocked them. The pages were older than the abbey where it had supposedly been kept, older even than the writing system they were thought to be written in. In other words, the book was already ancient before medieval Europe even existed. Ink analysis revealed something stranger. The chemical composition did not match any known medieval ink formula. Instead, it contained traces of rare minerals that could only be found in regions thousands of miles apart, suggesting whoever wrote it either traveled far and wide or somehow had access to resources that should not have been available at that time. Then came the spectral scans. Using ultraviolet light, researchers discovered hidden layers of text beneath the visible writing, palimpsests that had been scraped away and overwritten. Some of those hidden lines were in languages no one could identify. Others seemed to be diagrams, mathematical formulas that predicted astronomical events centuries in advance with eerie precision. And here's where it gets unsettling. Several of the scientists involved reported strange effects during their work. One technician said his instruments would power down every time he tried to scan a particular page. Another described hearing a low hum, like a distant chant, whenever the book was open. A historian on the team wrote in her notes, "I keep dreaming of a circle closing. Feels like the book is waiting for me to finish something." Some skeptics say this is just the human mind playing tricks, pareidolia, stress, the power of suggestion. But the team eventually locked the Codex back in its vault and refused further study, citing psychological safety concerns. For a group of scientists, that is as close as you get to saying, yeah, we got scared. So now we are left with a puzzle. We have hard evidence that the book is impossibly old, that its ink came from all over the world, that its pages hide layers of knowledge we still can't decode. But we also have a group of researchers who won't go near it again. Would you keep studying it if it started whispering to you at night, or would you shut the case? Lock the door and try to forget what you had seen. Every story has a turning point, and for the hidden Codex, this is it. Buried near the middle of the manuscript lies a single passage that has haunted scholars for centuries. It is short, only a few lines long, but it is the part no one can seem to agree on. Some call it a prophecy, others a warning, and a few refuse to even speak it aloud. Here is what the most widely accepted translation says: when the circle closes, the sky will open. When the sky opens, the earth will drink. And when the earth has had its fill, the keepers must choose, silence the voice forever, or become the voice themselves. Chilling, is not it? Some historians argue this was just poetic metaphor, maybe referring to some long-forgotten ritual or drought. But others say the language is too direct, too urgent to be symbolic. The phrase "the keepers must choose" has sparked endless debates. Who are the keepers? What voice must they silence? And what happens if they choose wrong? One researcher described reading this passage late at night in the archives and feeling the air turn icy cold, as if someone had opened a window that was not there. Another swore she saw faint writing appear in the margin next to the text, only to fade away when she blinked. Her notebook simply says, "It asked me what I would do." And this is where I have to stop and ask you, yes, you listening right now, if you were holding that book, staring at that line, feeling the weight of centuries pressing down on you, what would you choose? Would you silence the voice, close the book, and try to lock it away forever, or would you dare to become the voice? Knowing you might never be the same again, take a moment. Really think about it. Because from this point forward, the Codex is not just telling a story, it is inviting you into it. Once you get past that chilling passage, something remarkable happens. The Codex changes tone. What follows is not prophecy, not poetry, but what looks almost like a set of instructions. Riddles, maps, and symbols that seem to point somewhere. Imagine turning the pages and seeing crude drawings of mountains, rivers, constellations arranged like arrows in the night sky. One page shows a circular diagram with 4 points marked in red ink. Next to it, a line that reads something like, "Begin where the shadow touches the stone at dawn." Scholars have spent years trying to pinpoint what stone it means. Some think it is a reference to Stonehenge, others to an obscure altar in the Pyrenees. There are sketches of caves, spirals, and strange geometric patterns that match ancient megalith sites scattered across Europe. One illustration seems to depict a star map rotated upside down, as if to be read from below the earth. Another shows a key, not a literal one, but a drawing of a key-shaped constellation, something that astronomers later confirmed only appears in the sky once, every few centuries. The more you study these pages, the more it feels like the book is giving directions. Not just to a place, but to a moment in time, as if it is telling you, be here exactly when this happens and you will see. And here's the part that has driven researchers mad for generations. Every time someone tries to follow the clues, something goes wrong. Weather turns unexpectedly. Maps do not line up. Landmarks seem to vanish. It is as though the Codex is daring you to try, but only letting those who are truly ready find the destination. Imagine yourself now, sitting in that library, tracing the lines with your finger. Would you take the bait? Would you pack your bags, buy a plane ticket, follow a trail of cryptic instructions that could lead you anywhere, to a hidden valley, a forgotten ruin, or maybe somewhere you were never meant to go? And so the journey begins. Imagine yourself boarding a train in the early hours of the morning, the sky still dark, clutching a notebook filled with sketches copied from the Codex. Your heart is racing, not just from excitement, but from a strange sense that you are being watched. Every sound seems louder than usual. The hiss of the train brakes, the rattle of luggage, the distant whistle as the countryside slips past your window. The first stop is a windswept valley where ancient stones stand like silent sentinels. You kneel, brushing away dirt and moss until you find the mark from the Codex. A small spiral carved into the base of one stone. At dawn, the rising sun casts a shadow across the field, and for a moment you see it, the shadow lines up perfectly with a direction pointing toward the mountains. You follow the trail, moving from village to village, collecting local legends like breadcrumbs. The villagers are cautious at first, no one likes talking about the old places. But eventually, an old man by the fire tells you of a cave higher up the mountain where travelers sometimes hear chanting even when no one is there. Days pass. The journey becomes more difficult. The path narrows, the air grows colder, and you begin to feel that uncanny sense again, the feeling that someone is walking just a few steps behind you. Sometimes, at night, you swear you see movement at the edge of the firelight, just enough to make your skin prickle. Finally, one evening, you find it, a half-buried entrance carved into the rock, framed by weather-worn pillars. It looks exactly like the drawing in the Codex. Your breath catches. You are no longer just reading the story, you are inside it. And this is the moment you have to decide. Do you go in now, in the dark, with only your flashlight and your courage? Or do you wait for morning, risking that someone or something might get there first? You take a deep breath and step into the darkness. The air inside the cave is colder than outside, almost unnaturally so. Your flashlight beam dances along the walls, catching strange carvings, spirals, circles, figures with outstretched hands. The further you go, the quieter everything becomes, until you can hear your own heartbeat echoing off the stone. Then you notice it, a sound that does not belong to you. At first, it is faint, a low humming, like wind passing through a narrow tunnel. But then it grows clearer, resolving into what sounds like chanting. The hair on your arms stands on end. You turn off your flashlight, thinking maybe it is a trick of the echo. The chanting continues. Your rational mind scrambles for explanations. Maybe it is water dripping in rhythm. Maybe there is a hidden entrance where the wind is whistling through. But then a shape moves across the far wall, a shadow with no one to cast it. You freeze. Your breathing grows loud in your ears. The shadow seems to be gesturing, not toward you, but toward a stone slab at the end of the chamber. You feel compelled to walk closer. The slab is covered in dust, but as you brush it away, faint letters glow in the beam of your flashlight. They match the same script as the Codex. And then, just when you think your heart can't take it, something unexpected happens. A small pebble clatters from the ceiling and bounces right off your shoe. You nearly jump out of your skin, then laugh nervously because, of course, it is always the little things that scare you the most. Somewhere, you imagine the author of the Codex is laughing too. When you finally gather yourself, you realize the letters on the slab form a phrase, "You have come far, will you go further?" That is when the chanting stops. The silence that follows is so complete it feels heavy, like the cave itself is holding its breath, waiting for your answer. Would you go further into the darkness, not knowing what is waiting for you, or would you turn back, take what you have learned, and escape while you still can? What makes the hidden Codex so unnerving is not just the myths or the eerie encounters. It is the fact that there is actual evidence scattered through history that seems to back it up. In the archives of Paris, there is a 17th century map marked with strange red ink lines that do not match any known trade routes. When overlaid with the diagrams from the Codex, the lines form a perfect match. One route leads straight to a now ruined monastery in the Alps, the same region where a fragment of the Codex was supposedly recovered in 1892. Then there is the journal of a Jesuit missionary, Father Ignacio, who wrote in 1721 about finding a book with no beginning and no end. His journal describes carvings on the cave walls identical to those you saw in your mind earlier, spirals, circles, and figures that seem half-human. He writes that he felt as though someone else's memory was being placed in my head. Archaeologists in the 20th century reported finding shards of pottery with inscriptions matching the Codex's symbols in locations as far apart as Turkey, Ireland, and North Africa, as if whoever wrote it traveled across continents or sent fragments to be hidden around the world. And perhaps most disturbing of all, there are modern photographs, grainy, black and white images taken in the early 1900s, showing a group of scholars gathered around a table with what looks very much like the Codex open before them. Within a year, 3 of those scholars died under mysterious circumstances, 1 simply vanished, and the surviving member refused to ever speak of the book again. Even skeptics admit that the trail of evidence is difficult to dismiss. Too many coincidences, too many repeating symbols, too many stories separated by centuries and continents that somehow match. At this point, the question becomes less about whether the Codex is real, and more about whether it was ever meant to be found. And here you are, sitting with all this information, your heart beating just a little faster, knowing that you are following the same trail that so many others have followed, and that some of them never came back from. Would you keep going, or is this where you close the book and decide that some mysteries are better left unsolved? After all this talk of forbidden books, secret caves, and mysterious deaths, you might be feeling your shoulders tense up, so let us take a breath together. Not every encounter with the Codex has ended in tragedy. Some have been surprisingly ridiculous. There is a story from the 1800s about a British antiquarian who insisted on reading the Codex by candlelight at exactly midnight, claiming that was the proper scholarly hour. According to his own diary, just as he reached a particularly ominous passage, a cat knocked over his candle, set fire to his notes, and sent him running through the house in his nightshirt yelling that the book has chosen me. Then there is the tale of a very skeptical professor in Prague who was convinced the Codex was nothing more than a hoax. He lectured about it constantly, mocking those who believed in its power. One day, he finally got permission to examine it himself. His students claimed that as soon as he opened the first page, all the lights in the room went out. When they came back on, he was sitting on the floor, pale as a ghost. He stood up slowly and said very quietly, "We will not be having class today." And then he left. The next day, he withdrew from the university and moved to the countryside to raise goats. Maybe the Codex does not just curse people, maybe it also has a sense of humor. Or maybe the universe likes to humble those who get too confident. Either way, these moments remind us that even in the middle of the darkest mysteries, there is room to laugh, if only to keep from screaming. Up until now, the Codex has felt like a puzzle, scattered clues, eerie warnings, strange maps. But this is where the pieces begin to fall into place. As you retrace everything you have seen, the symbols on the cover, the warnings from the keepers, the maps that point to impossible places, pattern starts to emerge. The 4 points marked in red ink form a perfect cross when plotted on a modern map. At the intersection of that cross lies a remote plateau, a place that, curiously, does not appear on most GPS systems. You gather the scattered notes left by others, Father Ignacio's journal, Elisabetta's translations, the spectral scans from Vienna. Together they seem to be pointing toward the same conclusion. The Codex is not just telling a story about the past. It is guiding its reader toward something that still exists, something hidden, waiting. You imagine standing on that plateau under a sky full of stars, holding the book open to the final set of instructions. The constellations above match the diagrams on the page. The ground beneath you vibrates softly, as though something below the surface is responding to your presence. One theory proposed by researchers is that the Codex was never meant to be read by just anyone. It was a test, a filter, meant to guide only those determined enough to follow its clues to the end. Perhaps that is why so many gave up, turned away, or went mad. They were not ready, and yet you have come this far. The choice is no longer theoretical. The next step will either reveal the truth or seal it away forever. Here's the most unsettling thought of all. What if the Codex is not merely revealing history, but shaping it? What if by following its path, you are becoming part of the story it has been trying to tell for centuries? Would you take the final step, knowing that it might not just change what you know, but change who you are? Just when you think you have reached the end, the Codex reveals something else, something no one expected. As you hold the book under the starlight, you notice that several pages are slightly thicker than the others, as if there is something hidden between them. You run your fingers along the edge and feel a faint seam. Carefully, you work it open, and a thin sheet slides out, a layer of vellum pressed flat for centuries. On it is a set of symbols completely different from the ones you have seen so far. These are sharper, more deliberate, almost mechanical in their precision. And at the bottom, a single line in a language you still do not recognize, but that somehow you understand this is not the first telling. Suddenly, everything shifts. What if the codex you have been reading is only a copy? What if there are others, maybe dozens, each slightly different? Each guiding its reader in a slightly different direction. Perhaps every keeper through history has left their own edition, hidden their own message. The thought makes your skin crawl. That would mean the book is not static at all. It is alive, growing, changing with each person who holds it. Every reader becomes an author. Every choice adds another layer. You flip through the rest of the pages, and now you start to notice details you missed before, faint margins where other hands have scribbled notes. Diagrams that look like they were added later in a different style of ink, entire paragraphs that seem to shimmer as if they were not always there. This is not just a codex. It is a conversation across centuries. And if that is true, then by reading it now, by standing here under these stars, you are writing the next chapter whether you want to or not. Would you go through with it, knowing that your decision could become part of the book forever, guiding whoever finds it next? Or would you leave the pages blank, refusing to let your story be written into its endless cycle? This is it, the moment the entire journey has been leading toward. The cave is silent, the night sky above impossibly clear, as though the stars themselves are waiting to see what you will do. The codex lies open on the stone slab, its pages catching the starlight, glowing faintly like something alive. And then you hear it, not chanting this time, not whispers, but a voice, deep and resonant, coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. It is not speaking in words, you know. Yet you understand it all the same. The circle is ready. Choose. You feel your heart hammering in your chest. This is no longer about history or myth. This is about you. You are the one holding the book now. You are the one who has followed the path, survived the warnings, pieced together the clues. And now, the Codex is asking you the same question it asked every keeper before you. Will you close it, or will you let it speak through you? The air grows heavy. You feel as though every decision you have ever made is weighing on you at once. The faces of those who came before flash through your mind. Father Guillaume laughing in the dark, Elisabetta scribbling her final note, the scholar in Prague walking away from his old life. Were they given this same choice? Did they all decide differently? Your hands are shaking now. The book seems to pulse under your fingertips, as though it has a heartbeat that is syncing with your own. You could turn the page and finish it. Learn whatever secret has been waiting for centuries. But you know that once you do, you can never go back to who you were. You imagine the possible futures, one where you leave now, locking the cave behind you, pretending none of this ever happened. Another where you keep reading, and the words pour into you like fire, changing the way you see everything, maybe changing you entirely. And then you realize perhaps this is the point. Perhaps the Codex was never about the words at all, but about forcing its reader to make this choice, to become part of the story. The voice comes again, softer this time, almost kind. Choose. So what do? Do you close the book, blow out the candle, and walk away into the night? Or do you turn the page, let the story claim you, and become its final author? Whichever you choose, you feel the cave grow warmer, the stars above brighter, as though the world itself is holding its breath, waiting to see which ending you will write. The choice is made, and though no one else is there to witness it, you feel the entire cave respond. If you turn the page, the words seem to leap from the parchment, not just into your eyes, but into your mind. They are not just telling you a story anymore, they are telling you what happens next. You feel a strange calm settle over you, as though some invisible hand has placed you exactly where you were always meant to be. If you chose to close the book, the glow fades slowly until the pages look ordinary again, but the silence is different now. Heavier. It feels like the cave knows what you did, and is disappointed or relieved. Either way, when you step back into the night, the stars seem different. Too bright, too close. You realize that you will never see them the same way again, because you now carry something you did not before, knowledge that cannot be shared, a burden that cannot be put down. People will ask where you have been, what you have found. You will want to tell them, but the words won't come out right. How can you explain that a book chose you, that it made you part of a story centuries in the making? In the weeks that follow, you may notice small changes, dreams that feel too real, numbers and symbols appearing in the edges of your vision, fading before you can write them down, moments where you sense that someone or something is walking just a step behind you, waiting. And perhaps late at night, when the house is quiet and the world is asleep, you will hear it again, a faint whisper, the echo of a choice you made deep underground, reminding you that your chapter has only just begun. And that, my friend, is where we leave the hidden codex for now. Whether you chose to turn the last page in your mind or to close the book and walk away, you have traveled far tonight. You have stood in forgotten libraries, followed clues across mountains, faced the darkness inside a cave, and made a choice that has echoed through centuries. So before you drift off to sleep, take a deep breath and let the story settle. Maybe it will follow you into your dreams. Maybe you will wake up tomorrow wondering whether you, too, are now part of the Codex's long conversation through time. Thank you for staying with me through this journey. If you felt a chill, if you smiled, or if you just enjoyed getting lost in the mystery, do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe if you have not yet, and leave a comment below. Tell me, if you had been there, standing in front of the book, would you have turned the page, or would you have left it closed? And what secret do you think lies hidden in those last lines we never read together? I can't wait to read what you think, and maybe, just maybe, your answer will inspire the next story we tell together. Sleep well, dream boldly, and I will see you in the next chapter.